Thank you, Say. And welcome back, America, to the Ely Loew 2040 campaign. As you may have noticed, we got our own sign. And as much as I loved imitating the Ben Shapiro show, I could not, in good faith, worship an inferior being. But it's been a while since I posted. I think it's been almost 6 months, and news has been crazy. A lot's happened, so I figured let's start with a recap. So we're going to do our 6-month recap, everything that's happened in the news from May to October. So let's start with May. May was kind of a slow month, but on May 7th, Jeff Sessions started the zero tolerance immigration policy, which led to family separations. It did not make much news at the time because at the time, Donald Trump was pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal. And then for the rest of May and going into June, Donald Trump had some back and forth with North Korea, Kim Jong-un, a little bit of Dennis Rodman sprinkled in there somewhere, which all culminated in a June 12th Singapore summit where Donald Trump met Kim Jong-un. They signed some agreements, some accords, and then no one really knows what's happened since then. But hopefully it's a step in the right direction. We'll see over time. Then on June 14th, a couple days later, the family separation issue and my immigration crisis started hitting national news, caused a lot of outcry, peaked on June 17th, according to Google Trends, which ultimately led to Donald Trump signing an executive order ending family separations. While still contentious, it seemed to knock it out of the news cycle. Then on June 27th, Justice Kennedy resigns from the Supreme Court, opening up another seat on the Supreme Court and allowing Donald Trump to nominate a second Supreme Court justice. Of course, this means that the balance of the Supreme Court would shift towards conservatives, so conservatives were really happy, and Democrats were in despair. And then on July 5th, Scott Pruitt resigns from the EPA under allegations of corruption, and he wrote a real ass-kissing letter to Donald Trump. I know no other way to describe it. On July 9th, Trump nominates Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. July 13th, Mueller indicts 12 Russian officials for interfering in U.S. elections. July 16th, Trump meets Putin and in a joint press conference says he doesn't see any reason why it would be the Russians who interfered in our elections. And then after a lot of heat, next day he changed it and said, oh, I made a mistake. I meant to say, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be the Russians. Likely story there, Donald Trump. On July 22nd, Trump tweets an all caps threat in response to a threat from Iran's leadership. So that was fun. And then on July 24th, a secret recording comes out of Trump and Cohen discussing payments to buy the McDougal story. McDougal was one of the porn stars that Trump allegedly had an affair with. On July 26th, Cohen claims that Trump had knowledge of his son's meeting with the Russian lawyer in 2016, one of the key events that provides some evidence to a Russian collusion narrative, but no evidence was forthcoming. August 12th, the Omarosa news cycle begins ahead of her book release. She also likes to release a couple tapes of discussions she had with various people, including John Kelly. And in that news cycle, she claimed that Donald Trump said the N-word, and there's tapes of it, but no evidence was ever forthcoming. This would be referring to his time on The Apprentice. On August 15th, Trump revokes John Brennan's security clearance, which leads to some discussions about what is a security clearance, why do people have it. And on August 19th, Juliana said his infamous comment, "Truth isn't truth," on national television, specifically referencing Trump's actions around his son's meeting with the Russian lawyer in 2016. And then on August 21st, Cohen pleads guilty to a variety of charges, including campaign finance law, and in his plea claims that Trump directed him to break campaign finance law, which directly indicted the President of the United States in a federal crime. On September 4th, the Kavanaugh hearing begins, of course, with massive opposition and protests, but on the same day, the New York Times released an article giving details about Bob Woodward's new book called Fear, which details chaos and disorganization in the Trump White House. On September 5th, to reinforce that narrative, the New York Times also published an anonymous op-ed claiming senior staffer was part of a secret group directing the president and trying to kind of mitigate the damage he could do. So on September 12th, there's a report of a damning letter against Kavanaugh the day before he was to be confirmed. On September 16th, Dr. Ford comes forward through a Washington Post article accusing Kavanaugh of attempted rape and hearings and additional allegations ensue. This attempted rape was 36 years ago when Kavanaugh would have been 17 and Ford would have been 15. On September 18th, in the midst of the Kavanaugh controversy, Stormy Daniels describes portions of her book where she describes Trump's private areas and compares them to the Mario Kart mushroom. So memes ensued. On September 27th, Ford and Kavanaugh testified to the Senate Judiciary Committee. On October 6th, Kavanaugh is voted to the Supreme Court 50-48. And on October 18th, a 7,000 people immigrant caravan starts getting some more news coverage. And on October 22nd, pipe bombs are found in George Soros's mailbox. The next day, more pipe bombs are found in various Democratic politicians' mail, including Clinton, Obama, and CNN offices, as well as a few more. And yesterday, on October 26th, I'm filming this on the 27th, the pipe bomb suspect was arrested. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings you to the present day. It's a crazy world we live in. It's a crazy people, crazy politics, but that's the news for you. So next, I'm going to share an unpopular opinion on immigration, but first, I have a heartfelt message for my friends. Non-friends, you can skip ahead a few minutes. I think it's about 3 or 4 minutes. Family, I love you guys. We know where we stand. You can skip ahead as well. It's not really relevant for you. But for those who are my friends, please come over to camera 2. Let's have a little discussion. Okay, friends, we need to have a chat. And look, I know I'm not a popular guy, right? These are magic cards on here. And, I never have illusions of being popular. But I did think I had friends. Friends who cared about me, friends who loved me, friends who appreciated what I brought to the friendship. On Facebook, I have over 1,000 friends. And look, I know some of them aren't real, but I thought, even 10% is a pretty good number. Lots of LinkedIn connections, people laugh at my jokes at parties, so I thought I had friends. But I went on my Patreon page before doing the filming, and I have 1 Patreon. 1. So, if anyone else is watching this, non-friends, if you ever want to know who your real friends are, just start a presidential campaign 20 years in the future and see who actually gives you any money. Now, some of you, friends, might be thinking, what kind of friend tries to guilt trip his friends into giving him money? That sounds like a pretty awful person. And if you said that, you would be right. I am a pretty awful friend. But that does call into question your judgment in becoming my friend. And let's face it, if you're making bad judgments about one of the most important decisions in life, like who you're friends with, then you might be making bad judgment calls in other areas of your life, like how to spend $1 a month. Just saying. So, and look, on a personal note, it's a little bit offensive. All I'm asking for is $1 a month, for the next 20, 25 years. You tell me you like my content, you laugh at my videos. Are you not entertained? Is our friendship worth so little to you? To you, Angela, Pamela, Sandra, Rita, Monica, Erica, Tina, Sandra, Mary, and Jessica? Especially you, Jessica. It hurts. What about you, Snuffy, Al, Leo, Little Mo with the gimpy leg, Cheeks, Bobby Bob, Cliff? Cliff, after all we've been through together, I think I can ask for this favor. I'm just disappointed in the lot of you. You see this? This is my heart, and it's bleeding. It's bleeding with little dollar per month shaped holes. Look, I think, turn upside down. Who's this? Stay. Look, I see all the Stevens in there. Oh, and then little Linaroo, Momo, Eli, my rich white boyfriend. Correction, it's boyfriend, 2 words, not 1 word. He's just a rich white boy who's my friend. Just clarifying that. And then, And the biggest hole of all. This is a $5 a month hole here. K-Bay. It hurts, guys. So I do want to take this time to thank my truest friend, my first patron. Thank you, Seisei. And in honor of being the first, I am going to say thank you in the beginning of every video and at the end of every video, mostly just to make my other friends jealous, especially K-Bay. All friends named in this segment are fictitious, and any resemblance to real-life characters is purely coincidental. No friends were lost in the making of this segment. At least I sure hope not. Thank you. Okay, so now back to our regular programming. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about immigration because there's a massive caravan of people coming to the United States. And it's gonna be an important issue when they get here. As well as the family separation issue, which I alluded to earlier in the half-year news review. It's still contentious and it's still happening in one way or another. So I mentioned before that I am the self-proclaimed voice of the purple voter. And I take that title very seriously. But usually what it means is that I have positions that land almost squarely on the Republican side. And I tend to usually consider myself more conservative. But I also have opinions that are squarely on the Democrat side. And then some of my opinions are kind of, a mix of both or, somewhere a little bit more nuanced. But sometimes I have an opinion that is outside both parties. I just think both parties are stupid. And in those situations, I realize I must have the least popular opinion. So I decided to name one of my segments after it. This is the least popular opinion. And today we're going to talk about immigration. So, before I get started, I wanted to share with you a philosophy in my life that has really helped inspire me and help me to understand my place in the world. It's helped me to really put perspective on everything I do. And it's the reality, and I know this can be hard to accept, the reality that we are all assholes. And I genuinely mean that. And nowhere is it more visible than when we are talking about immigration. And I'm going to start with the Republican side here, because it's much more obvious in the sense that every time we talk about immigration, the only argument is, but it's the law, it's the law. And look, we make the laws. So it's not just the laws, it's we made the laws that way because we want to be a certain way. So the real question when it comes to immigration is, let's say it's legal immigration. Well then, why don't we allow more legal immigration? Especially now, the economy is doing so well. Right? So it's not just the fact that it's the law, it's the fact that we want it to be the law. And there's a lot of suffering in the world. Look, I get, we can't solve all the suffering in the world. I also seen that video where immigration is such a small percentage of poverty, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't matter because the individuals who are coming, the individuals who have gotten to a point where they can cross the border, the individuals who are gotten to the point where they can apply for asylum or for a visa, they're the ones we can help. And actually we do have some kind of moral obligation to help them to the best of our ability. We have a wonderful country, a lot of freedoms that we take for granted, and it's wrong to deny people that for no good reason. Even if it puts a little bit of impact on our own economy. Like, we can handle it. And not only that, but if we're honest, we're taking the best of the best from these other countries. The opposite of what Donald Trump thinks, right? It's the ones who are most motivated, most willing to take risks, that are willing to cross the desert with half a loaf of bread and a bottle of water, even if it's illegal. So that's the Republican side. And look, I don't think it's too hard to convince a majority of people that Republicans are assholes when it comes to immigration. And look, Republicans, I understand your arguments. I also agree with them, but we need to do better. That's all I'm saying. Democrats, it's a little bit more subtle, the reason I think you guys are assholes, and I think it's because you don't have perspective, right? Donald Trump, in the beginning of 2017, cut the legal refugee number from 100K to 50K, right? So 50,000 people were no longer allowed to come to the United States like that. And those 50,000 people are now suffering in refugee camps where they have higher rates of sickness, death, suicide, infant mortality, and the children directly impacted by that are probably between 5 and 10K. And yet, you have family separations where you have maybe 5 to 1,000 children directly separated from their families. I'm not talking about unaccompanied minors. And it becomes the political issue to drive a wedge between Americans. Like there's no perspective there. And the other reality is those children, so what, we keep them with their parents and then we deport them. They're still gonna be in an awful, terrible situation. Like it's this kind of sanctimonious, self-righteous view of the world that actually means you're not really solving the problem. You're not really understanding the scale of it or the complexity of it. And you're not addressing the issue of legality. And you're not even discussing the more important point about us reducing our legal immigration. And so you're not solving the problem, and you're only making it worse, because then you're causing a backlash. And for those of you who do, let's say, those of you who are investing your time and your money to really helping people overcome their suffering, you're not assholes. And I did not mean to include you in this. But for those who use other people's suffering for their own political gain, Democrats, or those who ignore other people's suffering because it's hard to face, Republicans, we as a country can and should do better. And that is my view on immigration. And if that bothers you, or if you think I'm being the asshole, I agree. I am just a random asshole on the internet. And that is the least popular opinion. Okay, so I know it's been a long and boring show, but we're coming into our last segment here, a segment I like to call the belated PSA. Can you get numbers up on can you like put letters there with little shiny things? Maybe a unicorn leading the letters? Anyway, guys, if you can't do it, you can imagine it. I did the hard work of describing it. But in this segment, I chime in on a very important issue that is no longer relevant. So today's belated PSA is about the acronym IMHO. And for those of you that don't know, in the beginning of May, there was a little bit of internet controversy around whether it meant in my humble opinion or in my honest opinion. So I just want to make something very clear. Basically, if you have an opinion, you should be humble about it. No one gives an opinion dishonestly, usually because by definition, it's your opinion. Now, I know you can lie about facts, you can lie about something you did, but usually when you're giving your opinion, you're going to be pretty honest about what you think about something. And it just kind of cracked me up that this was an issue, because I think it's very clearly something that's a millennial problem. And just for the record, and I know I look very young and kind of in my early 20s, but I'm actually not a millennial. I'm kind of right on the borderline. So when I was young, and this might sound crazy, I wrote letters, like physical letters, and I had pen pals, and I had friends from different countries that I would write to. For you millennials, there's a description for what a pen pal is in the link below, because I don't think anyone would know what that means under a certain age. So like I knew what those acronyms meant because, you know, they were handwritten acronyms actually, and they came from our parents and our parents. So yeah, it was very common. But it's just shocking that the millennials didn't know that. And this came to my attention because of a video by Philly D, and I linked to the video below. And the funny thing is, I'm not a millennial, but Philly D is, right? So that's kind of the borderline. I'm not a millennial. Philip DeFranco is a millennial. He's a year younger than me, so it kind of gives you our age difference there. And he thought it was honest opinion. So it just goes to show you that, you millennials need to be just a little bit more humble in everything you're doing. So yeah, you're welcome. I'm very happy to be a role model and a guide, especially in the areas of humility. I'm one of the humblest people you know, so if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and I'll give you a little advice. So that sums up our segment today. Don't forget to vote in 2040. Maybe vote in November, but like try to do a little research first, you know who you're voting for and why, but definitely vote in 2040, because I really need that millennial vote. Like I need the millennial vote. And that's it, America. Enjoy Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all that, because probably won't see you till 2019.